Welcome to Community Closeups, a webinar series highlighting the unique and talented individuals in our community. David, welcome back. It's been too long.
It has been. It's been a while, but you've been moving and you got into your new place. I have not been moving. I've literally been in this room since COVID started, I think. So, that's been a little stir crazy. But I'm excited
want to get outside.
Yeah, I think
want to go outside a little bit.
I think I might, yeah. But I'm excited to get back into it with you. And our guest star today, Richard Toland, who is a Microsoft 365 community contributor, does a lot of speaking. So I'm excited to have you on the show today, Richard. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Why don't you start out by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your family, some of the basics.
Sure. So I am from Denver, Colorado, born and raised. We live a little ways outside the city now, but still here in Colorado. I have a family of 4. So it's me and my wife, 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a cat. We can't get rid of the cat, but she's here. And yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell. Again, like a native, my parents are here. My wife's parents are down in Monument area, not too far from us. So it's cool. It's nice having the family close together still, and we spend a lot of time with them, going camping in the summers and hanging out. So I'm looking forward to this COVID thing kicking out of town so we can go camping, get all the parks open again, and go play.
Yeah, now you guys both live in Colorado, so you're both big campers, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, where have you been lately?
Jeep guys too. I haven't been camping, but so we try to go every weekend. So we pack up Friday at like noon and then go head out. My favorite place is just on the other side of Independence Pass, which is near Aspen. On the back side of it, there's a valley in this road called Lincoln Creek. It's probably like a class 4 road, 3 road. It's not super difficult. And you drive like 6 miles out, 8 miles out, and then it's just the most beautiful place. You're just surrounded by 13ers, and it's quiet. So
yeah, you just mentioned classification on your roads. What exactly is that?
There's different levels of road. Like you have your standard federal roads, like the highway, you have town roads, and then you have county roads, and there's 5 levels of county roads. And so the levels are based on the maintenance of the road. So generally speaking, a class 1 road is going to be something that I live on. So my current house, dirt road, they grade the road, they maintain the road. Once you get up into like class 4, class 5, they don't maintain the roads. So they're just like what they call Jeep trails, I'll call it. And then beyond that, county roads, beyond that, there are Forest Service roads, which are basically old logging roads. People use them for 4x4 trails or dirt biking. And so you can still extend beyond that as well, but those aren't maintained at all by any town.
I'm pretty sure though you live now in Cloud City, right? I've the picture that you posted on Twitter the other day where you're like, oh, here's my road, and I was like, what is that? That's clouds. That is crazy. Yeah. You're so far above the clouds. We'll include that in the video for everyone to see. But so Richard, when you and the family go camping, does like the whole family, is everybody into it? The kids, the dogs, does the cat follow along too? And
yeah, sometimes. So usually not our cat, but we do all take our dogs. Like we're doing a Father's Day trip this year, which is my folks, my in-laws, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and their dogs, my brother-in-law, his dog, and his kids, and then sometimes my sister-in-law, she'll come up for a day or 2 and hang out too. But yeah, and then my brother, he's a camper, but he does tent camping. We're a bunch of glampers and campers, so it's a different experience. After like 10 years or 12 years of tent camping, we decided to go camper.
How big is
your camper? Yeah.
Ours is a 26-footer. It's a tongue trailer, so not a 5th wheel, a tow trailer. So ours is a 26-footer, no pull out, so we don't have a slide out on the sides. We actually bought it. My father-in-law offered it to us for a killer deal. And when, at the time I was kind of like, they wanted to split it between my wife and my brother-in-law, you know, share it. And I was like, no, because we all go camping together. That's not gonna fit everybody. So we snagged it while we could and loved it ever since.
Nice. Yeah.
That's part of why we moved out where we're at. We ended up finding a property with an outbuilding, and I modified the building to make the door bigger so I could get the camper inside and stop paying for storage.
Oh, very nice. So you can protect it from all the hail.
Yeah. It was we had it for a year, and like we narrowly missed a pretty bad hailstorm twice while it was in a storage unit. And so our friends, they have 1 year newer than ours, but they have the exact same camper, newer with different, you know, colors of finishings inside, but it's the same camper, same manufacturer. And we pulled out of the storage unit and went camping with it. And they're in the spot like right next to us in the storage place where we're at. And they got destroyed. It was like baseball size hail and just totally destroyed their camper.
Wow. It's amazing how hail seems to have a mind of its own, you know?
Yeah. Everything from golf balls to baseballs out here. It gets crazy sometimes.
Yeah, that was the strangest thing I think for me when we moved to Texas, because in California we don't get hail, right? Unless people are throwing ice at you, which I'm sure probably happens in some areas of Los Angeles. But when I saw like hail damaged car sales, I'm like, what? At some point, why are you not putting these cars under a cover if you're only selling cars? Like, I don't get it.
They've started doing that. So like AutoNation, all their lots have like covers for all their for most of their cars just because of hail. I mean, you lose millions of dollars during one hailstorm, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, we had one, what was it, like 3 years ago or 2 or 3 years ago? They I mean, the insurance companies almost pulled it for a lot of dealerships around here. And immediately we saw pop-ups, like they're all covered lots down here now in the city. It's crazy.
Yeah. Especially like the southeast, or at least east side of Denver, gets some of the worst hail that the entire state gets, right? So like you guys are in a spot where the real baseball size hail actually is like a frequent thing, or golf ball size hail. My old place, it was just like we had some big hail, you know, like this big, but that was rare. It was usually just the small, like snow colored soft hail. So
yeah, we get about once a year we get the crazy stuff. I mean, at least one storm a year we get some really crazy stuff in the kind of southeastern part of the city. Mid
to end June, some random storm comes in and crashes everything. So.
All right, so keeping on the theme of cars here, I guess, right? I know Bo's gonna have plenty to say about this. We asked you what your dream car was, and usually people submit dream cars. They're gonna submit like just a car, maybe a car and a make and a model. Yours might have been the most specific car detail listing that I've ever seen, right? Hardtop 49 to 51 first gen Lincoln Cosmopolitan with optional 10-cylinder straight pipes, 4-60 cross axle, GMC 3/4 ton suspension, and suicide doors. Race ready with a touch of class. So not that you've thought about it at all by those details, right? Just a little bit maybe. Tell us a little bit about that.
Touch of class and some sex appeal. So that's one of the cars that I don't know. So we used to go to the drag strip a lot when I was a kid over on C470, and you know, about every year they do like, well, they always do high school drag every year, but they would they do just after their 4th of July celebration. A lot of times they would have, you know, like classic cars that were rigged out for drag racing and stuff. And I saw it's kind of right before American Muscle and Sharp Edges really took over. But the Lincoln Cosmopolitan went through a transition with that too, right? And I don't know, ever since, so when I was in my early 20s, I did a frame up restore on a Jeep. I bought it off of my dad. It was a 67 CJ6, and it had a lot of Buick compatibility, the Lincoln and Buick part interchangeability. So, you know, upgraded to like power steering and all this stuff. And a lot of them came out of Lincoln Cosmopolitan. So I was really familiar with the drivetrain and the options. the thing I like the most, I think, about the Lincoln Cosmopolitan, especially from drag capacity, is that 10-cylinder fits in there like a glove. And yeah, I don't know. It's ever since I've seen that car, it's always just stuck in my head as one of the sexiest cars I think I've ever seen. And
there's lots of interesting things about this car, right? It's the first post-war car Lincoln made,
Yeah.
new style. They started to adopt this like they call ponton or pontoon style headlights, or like recessed lights. It was kind of the thing in the late 40s, early 50s before muscle cars came in. The car was the last series of cars that had a manual transmission for Lincoln until like 2000, until the LS came out. So it's actually kind of a significant car. I am interested why you chose that and not the fastback though, because I think the fastback is a more rare car. It only was produced in 1 year, but the hardtop's okay.
So the fastback has difficulty putting the suicide doors in, and for me, like to build it or customize it, I would have to do the suicide doors. That's just one sexy option then.
So
really kind of struggle with that in the framing on the fastback.
So then in your dream car, did you do the two door? Because I think all 4 doors had suicide doors installed from the factory.
Yeah, no. So my dream car was a 2-door with the suicide.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The Cosmo was like the flagship car of Lincoln at the time. It was like the high-end luxury car. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It had all the bells and whistles.
Well, they converted 3 of them in the lifespan of the Cosmopolitan. There were 3 of them that were converted into presidential, like with the bulletproof glass bubble over the top of it. In the parade, there were 2 that were converted for presidential parade, and then 1 for like the actual presidential limousine, but with a glass top and a retractable. Through the glass top, they had like a retractable cloth fabric that they could close over for shade. It was it's crazy. It was crazy.
It was the presidential car for like a while. I think it was like from when it first came out, 49 to like 65. It was like the car, but it wasn't called a bubble top until the president had installed the glass top on it, which I assume for safety purposes. You know how that goes.
It's so cool.
I was just gonna say, so if you ever built one and restored it, would you put on the bubble and drive around like?
No, I wouldn't. No, definitely not. Especially not tricking it out for racing.
Yeah. It was also a bulletproof glass top. Cool. Well, I can tell Richard's a car guy, so we get along just fine.
I love a car, but Jeeps are my in my blood. So
yeah. We had a Jeep and we did a lift and bumpers and a winch and rooftop tent, and we did that for a little while. And then we got a dog because we only had a 2-door Wrangler, and the dog just doesn't fit with all of our stuff. So we ended up moving the rooftop tent to my truck, my Tacoma. But recently we just picked up a new Grand Cherokee, so we're back in a Jeep.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And it looks slick. It is a nice looking gray, right? Like this. Not matte, but not metallic gray.
Yeah, like a flat gray, and it's all blacked out. So it has black wheels, black mirrors, black windows,
Sweet.
black. Yeah, it looks really good.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll have to send you guys some pictures of the restore I did. It was pretty nice. I got it stuck in the snow a few times. I broke when I finally. So I did the frame up rebuild, and tore it all down. Like it was the tub on it was pretty badly rusted, so I ended up getting a new tub. Refinished the whole thing, rebuilt. It had the Dauntless V6 in it, the 225 Oddfire V6, and the transmission was okay. It was the Spicer T19 transmission. It did okay. I put a worn overdrive, so I could get it up to highway speed. In fact, with the lift, I could get the thing to go like 80. It was totally unsafe, like just all over the road. But it would go. It would get up and move even on that V6, and to the paint job and everything myself. It wasn't the best paint job, but I did it. Put a nice custom fit soft top on it, and I ended up selling it to I had a loan I needed to pay off, and I somehow I got a killer financing deal through Jeep on a 4-door. So when the 2007 JK came out, I ended up purchasing, I got one of those, the four-door JK Unlimited. And so they were sitting right next to each other in the driveway for about a month. And then I decided, I got to pay off this other loan. I better sell. And so I sold off my 67 and I came inside and cried big, ugly man tears. My wife still laughs at me for it. Like, it was just, I mean, it was my dad's Jeep, you know, and I rebuilt the whole thing. And he even still kicks me and makes fun of me for, like, you got rid of my Jeep.
And it's probably worth more today than it was when you sold it. So
yeah, and it went to, somebody that's going to love him too. So his name was Dozer. When I first started dating my wife, just a little backstory on that. When I first started dating my wife, I think it was like a first date or second date. I said, hey, I have a Jeep I'm working on. And it was just literally pile of parts all over my garage floor, right? And she goes, what is that, right? And maybe like a month or two later, I started getting it all back on the frame and putting things together. And at one point, I had the engine running, but I had no brakes. Like, I didn't have brakes, but it was a granny low, Spicer transmission. So I got it would do like 2 miles an hour when I was warm in granny low. And so I would, as I was tuning the engine, I'm putting around the neighborhood with the engine nice and warm. I'm putting around the neighborhood, no brakes. But I get in the granny low and yell at everybody, get out of the way. So she came over for a date night and I laid down the windshield and I was like, hey, come on over. And I went inside, I took a shower. In the meantime, the engine cooled down, right? So she gets there and we go around the block. And before I would like hit the curb and just time it right to kill the engine in granny low and it would just stop right in the garage. But when the engine cooled, I hit the curb and it revved up because it was trying to adjust the timing, and it drove right through the garage in my house and just pushed my workbench into the kitchen of my house. It was just like a bulldozer. It was crazy. So he was named Dozer, and I forever cry about getting rid of Dozer. But he went to
that's a great name. So you said it was a CJ5?
6, actually, 67 CJ6.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
CJ5.
Yeah, the rarest of the rare.
It's like the ones no one wanted, especially because that same engine, actually, it was they produced it as like a longer engine, so the hood of the CJ5 was longer than what everyone wanted.
Yeah, Jeep went through some crazy transitions.
So after you destroyed your kitchen,
so
after you destroyed your kitchen, she married you. She probably figured, this guy's a gold mine. I'm going to get a house redecoration out of this guy at least every couple of years when he bombs things into the house.
I was amazed. We have a picture of me outside like just the garage door where I just pushed the wall kind of back together and it's like this, right? And I pushed it and it kind of went like this. And we had this picture of me just standing there on the wall like, oh no. And she still went on a date with me. I was amazed.
Well, so I get taught cars all day, but one of the best stories was we were fixing up, my friend Sean and I were fixing up a old Volkswagen, and we got it inspected without seatbelts. They just didn't check.
Well, you didn't need them if it didn't come with an original.
No brakes. Who cares? No seatbelts. Who cares?
Details.
You don't need brakes.
Yeah.
That's what your transmission is for.
Yeah, exactly. Just downshift. Put it in reverse. You can replace the transmission. You might not be able to replace that wall for the same price.
Yeah, totally.
So, your favorite places to visit? You said I think you said Disney World and Jamaica for outside the US. Disney World inside, Jamaica outside. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we my wife and I both, we're pretty domestic travelers in the U.S. We've only been outside the country a few times, but we joined in 2015. We joined the Disney Vacation Club after it took some convincing from some friends of ours. We ended up going on a glamorous trip with them, and we had cash paid for a cruise and went on our first short Disney cruise with the kids when they were super little, and loved every minute of it. And then I found out that you could use the vacation club points and transfer them to the ships. So we purchased into the program for that. So that's how we've used our Disney points has been for a lot for cruising. We transferred over to cruising, but anyway, neither here nor there. The cruise line, we've actually been to Jamaica twice on the Disney cruise line, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's just one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. You know, the Jamaican beaches, and the rum.
Yeah.
The people
Appleton's,
are, yeah, Appleton's estate is there. You know, the sugar fields are still there. We toured the estate, and it's amazing to me, like the history of Jamaica and, you know, what it's been through, and through, you know, kind of throughout seeing the different islands we've been to throughout the Caribbean. I'm really partial to the people there. At least, you know, I've been told we've only visited the good side of Jamaica, but I don't know. I mean, the people there are just so down to earth and so true, you know, like real people, and they're not pushy. They're really good to the kids every time, everywhere we've gone. And we've been to some other islands that are, you know, are not that. And for us, all of our traveling these days is really geared towards the kids. I mean, there are a few places or times that we go as adults and we'll go play, but largely most of our travel, I would say 90% of our travel is family travel, and we do it for the kids' experiences. Jamaica is also a place where, you know, you see it's I wouldn't say, I mean, certainly not poverty stricken, but you see an obvious separation in caste of people, and educationally for our kids, it's really good for them to see, you know, here in the United States, we're first world spoiled people sometimes, and you know, hey, let's learn about these other cultures, and let's learn about how these societies are split and how they get along. And it's, I don't know, it's really cool. So Jamaica, yeah, definitely when I'm outside the continental United States.
Yeah.
And then
So if I could just,
yeah, go ahead.
Can we just talk about that? I completely agree with you. So I have a new favorite island, and that sounds so like pretentious, but like I have a new place that I do like to visit. But up until
they're working on
that. Up until that trip, Jamaica was the place that like I first went as a kid, and as I had an affinity for it since then. So and we didn't go to a nice park. Like we went to Kingston, and it's not like it's the nicest place. You probably went to Ocho Rios on the north side where the waterfall is, or the falls, and like it's really nice.
Yeah, Falmouth, yeah.
Up there. Yeah. So Falmouth too, yeah. So on the north side, there's a road, and it's the A1 or something that goes up through and then cuts through the country. As you drive through it, the left-hand side is like normal. It's resorts, right? The nice beaches and the beautiful places. And then completely on the opposite side, it's everyone else. Shanties. You know, it's exactly, you know, and so I agree that the people of Jamaica are the nicest people I have ever met coming into their country, and they accept us regardless of where we are from. And like we've had some of the best experiences at Jamaican resorts, and I cannot speak enough to the quality of people there that are just so nice. So I just wanted to touch on that, and also agree that it's a beautiful country that unfortunately has gone through tough times. Not their fault, but if anyone can visit that country and contribute to it, do it, because it's a great place to visit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we saw. I mean, we I think it was like 2 years ago now, but we went right after the hurricane came through, and it was up in, you know, question. The last time we were there was right after the hurricanes all came through and crushed a bunch of islands. And there was, I was very surprised in the wake of all of that, right? I was surprised at how different cultures on different islands that this thing had traversed through treated each other on the island, and then treated us as guests. You know, to your point, I mean, Jamaica, granted, they didn't take the brunt of this storm, but just just the way that they treated people, treated, you know, my kids for sure, but treated people in general was drastically different than some other places, some other islands that we visited. And, you know, I don't want to talk bad about anybody. Everybody goes through hard times, and hurricanes are hard times. But then, you know, we went to another island where, I don't know, they were hit really hard, and they were pretty sweet to the kids too. So you never know. I think cultures on the islands are very diverse too. And for us traveling, I mean, that's a lot of why we're taking the kids out, right? It's just you get them exposed to different cultures and different, you know, places. We've done, so we've only ever cruised on Disney Cruise Line, and I think we've had kind of our fill of we've done all the runs that they do, Eastern, Western, Caribbean, and I think we're probably going to go somewhere cold next. So maybe we'll try to find a cruise line that'll hit like Alaska or do something European. I'm surprised actually that the European cruises are much cheaper than the Caribbean cruises in some cases. I think because, you know, you go transatlantic and it's like 2 solid weeks. So I think it's hard for them to fill those boats, you know, get people on vacation for that long. But I don't know, we'll explore, we'll see some more of the world. The kids are bigger now too. Like, I think a lot of that was in the event of an emergency, let's stay close to home, where if we had to, you know, fly back or get our way back fast, we could. But they're bigger now, and they're, I think, more adept to travel. They're certainly, my kids are fantastic flyers. But putting them on, you know, an 8 or 12 hour flight to go Europe or like Australia or wherever else you could go in the world, right? That's probably a stretch for my kids.
The cruise experience changes once you get out of the Caribbeans, right? Like, there's an emphasis on culture that I think is a little bit different in Europe than everywhere else in the world, because it's such an old place. So there's things you can do there that your kids might appreciate more, architecture and like the history of ourselves. I mean, we're here in the US, but we came from somewhere else, right? So you know, there's a different appreciation once you get to explore a European country and really learn about real civilization.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm excited to get them out and get them adventuring.
Yeah, our kids are in the same route. They've been traveling since they were little kids, and they enjoy it. And we had, you know, as Bo knows, big old lofty plans for ECS this year, European Collaboration Summit. Yeah. And of course, it's on hold for now, but we'll get there. Our flight was officially canceled today by Delta, so just another opportunity to rebook it. But
so did they give you a credit, or did they give you like a reschedule window?
Well, so if you, the reason I kept waiting and waiting and waiting was because if they cancel it, you can get a refund. If they cancel the flight, you can get a refund. Otherwise, if you just call and say, yeah, I'm not traveling because of COVID, then they give you a credit only. So we actually get a choice. I may just keep the credit with them because we know we're going to use it, whether it be in the next 6 months. But if we do take the credit, we have like 2 years to use it. They're being pretty generous with it. Yeah,
that's really cool.
I was gonna say that there's always ECS next year. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, they've scheduled it for October for now. But again, we'll see if that happens. They also canceled Oktoberfest in Germany, so we'll see. So between Disney World domestically and your Disney cruises internationally, if you had to, you know, COVID aside, if you had to choose between one or the other, what has become your favorite?
I think I would stick to Disney World. I mean, we've been a lot of places here in the U.S., but for 2 reasons. One, again, you know, going back to the kids, I've never traveled anywhere that they treated my kids better than Disney World ever. And my kids require some different attention, and Disney World is really sensitive to that. And the cast members that are there, the employees base is all really sensitive to that, and they go way out of their way to make it a really nice experience for the entire family. and any guests we've ever had there. But specifically, the way that they treat my kids is just amazing. Even before my kids, so like I didn't make it to Disney World until my wife and I went there the first time in our 20s, mid 20s, right? And I'd never been to any Disney park or anything like that. We have Elitch's here in Colorado, Six Flags Elitch's now. But before that, it was just Elitch's, and we had Lakeside, Colorado, which is, you know, dangerous.
I think that's a nightmare town. I don't think like there's actually a fair there. I think it's just like the place where like at night clowns come out and just like scare people. It's this place north of Denver at like 40th Street or something around there. And it's like they have two really old school wood roller coasters that are just like the scariest things you've ever seen. But the fair itself is situated on a lake, so the town's called Lakeside. So it's really cool because it's like on a lake, but at the same time, nothing's been updated in like 100 years. I don't know how old this place is, but it looks old.
Yeah, you sealed it for me when you mentioned clowns roaming around. I'm out. Yeah.
There's one roller coaster there that's called the Chipmunk, and it actually hangs out over the lake, and it does like a 90-degree turn, and you just think, oh man, this rickety old thing is gonna fall in the lake every time. So I grew up on those two theme parks, you know, and since my mid 20s, that's been a while now. I won't go into that, but so since
you're like
my
26 now, 27 now. I forget.
Something like that. Yeah. That's why I keep it bald. I don't want to show too much of the truth there. But you know, since then, I've seen it change like all the time. It's constantly new things, new experiences, new, just new and different things. We've been down there, I don't know, maybe a dozen times since our first time, and every time I go there, I see something new or different, and that's cool, you know, like. And it's all themed on things that I like because I'm a super nerd. So now they have Marvel, right? And they have Star Wars, and I mean, whew, Galaxy's Edge. Come on. Right?
Have you been out to Disneyland? Have you guys been to Disneyland or?
We haven't. No. So and everybody keeps laughing at us. Like all of our Disney people that we travel with, they keep laughing at us. Like, come on. Yeah. No, we haven't done Disneyland yet. Just Disney World.
Now a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people, if they started with Disney World, and I've not been to Disney World, but when they started with it and they go to Disneyland, they're disappointed because it's so much smaller. But I think, and you guys not having gone, I would say when you do go, keep in mind that it's original, right? This all started as just an idea, whereas Disney World is this just master planned world and galaxy and everything, whereas Disneyland is in the middle of a neighborhood. Right, and they've built things around it now, hotels and stuff, but it just started and they didn't have infinite Everglades to cut down and build up monstrous Disney World around it, right? So it's nostalgic to me because it's original and it's you know, it's history.
Yeah, for sure. And I know like I mean, you know, Walt Disney as a company is one thing, but Walt Disney as the man is different, you know, and it's a lot of really good history and culture, I think, to understand where he came from and what he became, what his family became, and what kind of dynasty they built coast to coast, right? And a lot of his international travel too, I think had had just a tremendous amount of impact on his family and his artistic inspiration. You know, we all have our idols, right? Like I could count them out like on my fingers, how many super famous people that I look up to. He's definitely one of them. And you're right. I mean, the history of that park, it started it all, right? Like,
right.
That was it for theme parks. That was it. And yeah, so I'm actually looking forward to that, getting out there and checking it out. We're probably, so, I mean, obviously with COVID, this year's out, but maybe we're thinking next year. So this year, actually, here in 2 weeks, we were supposed to go to Disney World with my in-laws. This is the first time we've all been out there together, and that got canceled. So we're looking forward to maybe planning something next year, and we may end up going out there to California instead. So
Yeah, it'd be
Go
cool.
check it
It's
out.
cool. When we went to, well, part of our ECS trip was going into France and going to Disneyland Paris. So it's still something we'll do when we
Oh,
go out
yes.
there. But that's,
Sweet.
but you have to, from what I understand, and we just did a ton of homework and reading. It's very different. I'm excited for it because some of my favorite movies are Pixar, and one of which is Ratatouille.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get a lot of love to me in the States, but in Paris Disneyland, it's got a whole section of, well, Walt Disney Studios there. It's kind of like the California Adventure, I guess, for Los Angeles. But they've got a whole Ratatouille ride and a nice high-end restaurant dedicated to Ratatouille. So I'm excited for that.
So let's just ride this wave. So we're talking about theme parks and fairs. I was super interested about your favorite drink is a Slurpee.
Yes.
It was a
Yes,
little not a standard Slurpee, but your favorite drink was a Slurpee.
Yeah, so and I don't know why or when that happened, but there's for me there's a very clear distinction between like an icy and a slushy and a Slurpee. Like they're different in almost everywhere I go, almost all the 7-Elevens I ever go into, right? You can get a Coke and a cherry. And so yeah, so the Rob Roy mix is kind of my go-to mix up on a Slurpee machine. I'm not usually a big mixer. Like I wouldn't, some people go and test them all. My kids go and mix every flavor they can and see what comes out of it. I'm like, that just sounds like it would taste brown. I don't know. So of the mixes that I do, yeah, the Rob Roy is definitely my mix. Coke first, usually. I do the Coke first and cherry on top.
And then after the fact, you add Scotch, vermouth, and bitters like a Rob Roy.
Yes, yeah, and that one has been a long time coming. So my dad, that was actually a drink my dad introduced me to at a pretty young age. I'll say when I was 21, whatever.
Yeah, of course. It
It's
was a different
the
time
rusted
back
nail.
then.
It was a different time. Yeah, that's right. 26 years ago or whatever. Yeah, he a drink that he really liked is the Rusty Nails Little Scotch, and in the mix up to sweeten it up. And I don't know, it kind of stuck with me. So that's kind of my go-to when I'm drinking something hard. That's what I usually, if I'm gonna mix it. Otherwise, it's just straight Scotch.
There you go.
I may
There
get
you
a
go.
little more with the COVID coming out, but
Well, I think many Scotch drinkers might be upset if you mix in syrup and much crushed ice. So you keep that on the down low if you were doing that.
Your Scotch Slurpee. Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
throw some
there you
Scotch
go.
and ice and a Vitamix, and
cherry on top.
You're in the SharePoint community. You're very familiar in the GCC space, I think. You're very knowledgeable there. That's kind of your area of expertise. What's your experience? Where'd you start out in SharePoint? Why'd you start out in SharePoint?
Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna say, so I come from a really strong infrastructure background. Data center design down to hardware design, down to OS design, in partnership with mostly Microsoft has been my focus, Microsoft technologies, dabbled in a few others, right? I'm trying out a Chromebook now. That's cool. Anyway, so coming from strongly Microsoft and infrastructure background, I transitioned in roughly 2006, end of 2006, early 2007 on a MOS consolidation project, right? SharePoint MOS. And we were consolidating lots of different web applications together into a massive like employee portal plus application space plus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that SharePoint's good at. And I got my taste for SharePoint then and just kind of never looked back. Like I had administered it prior to that, right? From the systems admin side of things, keep the servers on, do some permissions in SharePoint before 2007. And that was cool. But man, I really got a taste for it with that conversion project or migration project and never looked back. Fast forward to today, yeah, the cloud went crazy and all those on-prem Office server suite of technologies all shuffled up onto 365. And I think it's good to see I'm seeing nowadays there's a bridge between customs app development and what you can do in the 365 space. And I'm loving what I see now that those two spaces are interleaving, right? They're integrating more and more than they've ever done before. Simply because I think the simplicity of the cloud services is reached a totally new audience, right? And in the community, I've seen spaces that have historically been really siloed. This is mine, right? This is my information. I don't share. And I've seen, especially like in apps dev, right? Custom apps development has been historically a lot of that. And I've seen kind of an evolution of people in those communities, those small niche communities that are really starting to evolve, and they're starting to understand the power of giving and of receiving from that community. So that's huge for me. I think that's cool. And I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if the community hadn't given to me some and helped me out along the way. So I like to give back wherever I can. Usually it's in speaking, although this year I'm really trying to ramp up on my blog.
So going back to what you're saying about the community and stuff like that, I wanted to touch on that for a couple of minutes. We see that a lot with PNP, and we know PNP has probably helped a lot of that, which is amazing. Because I think what we had seen is, like you said, app dev people will kind of build these little script libraries or libraries of little things that they could run, components or whatever, and they would kind of keep it to themselves, and everybody would have their own flavor of really the same thing. And what we're seeing with PNP is that when everyone starts working together and not worried about, well, if I show him my secret sauce, then I'm no longer needed. And that's not true. I always liken it to kind of like paying for that $100 5-star meal. Even if we're given the recipe, the ingredients, and all of the above on how to go do it ourselves, we're still not going to do it. Many of us still just like to go ahead and go experience that $100 5-star meal. And so there's no threat of losing that. So if we share with one another all our knowledge, then it only makes everything better, instead of us all just having, like you said, these siloed little almost exact copies of one another that do things just slightly different. So I think that's been incredible. And a lot of that comes from the community and everyone willing to kind of help one another. And you're part of that. So you do a lot of speaking. When we can get back to speaking, you'll be doing a lot more speaking, I'm sure. What got you there? What started your journey and desire to start saying, I'm going to go beyond just a consumer of the community, I want to become a contributor?
Yeah, so I started kind of small potatoes, right? So I started, and I had my own user group or social get together that we would do. It was called Beer and Boards, right? So the notion of it is you bring a beer that you like to share, and we will help you. And I provided the food, but everybody had to bring a beer that they like to share with other people. And over the meal, we all kind of share the food and the drinks, and over the meal, we would all solution for each other of totally cross technologies. We had SQL people in there, SharePoint people in there, apps dev people in there, and all over the place. We were all trying to help each other solution. It was cool. It got to be like, I think the biggest one I ran was maybe 15 attendees, so it wasn't huge. But usually, after we'd solution for each other or with each other, kind of sharing ideas and sharing knowledge, we would have a targeted talk of something. Somebody would put together a presentation of PowerShell or of C# code or whatever and present it to everybody else. And it was neat. And then one of the people that came to that actually recommended I start, doing more structure or public speaking in structured forums. So, go check out the SharePoint user groups, go check out, because SharePoint's my, sweet space, go check out SharePoint user groups, go check out SharePoint Saturdays. And then, but this person was actually pushing hard on SharePoint Fest. And at the time, TechCon was kind of in a space, and SharePoint Fest was going strong, and I said, sure, I'm willing to do it. And so they kind of name dropped for me into the SharePoint Fest, and I put into the SharePoint Fest. And the first SharePoint Fest I got to was, it was here in Denver. It was the last one in Denver, but it was the first one I spoke at. And there was that connection, like you can kind of see it when someone is in a session of yours or a classroom setting, I've felt it myself in more than one occasion where the light bulb comes on, right? And you go, oh man, I can totally use that. They just showed me something that I can put into practical application right now. And that first SharePoint Fest, I presented a pretty technical session, pretty high level technical, I mean deep dive technical session. And man, one of the people in the back just wasn't really paying attention, was kind of looking around or fumbling, and then just went, what? and it hooked me, I was like, that's awesome. I was able to help that person out, and that kind of drives me. It keeps me coming back, like just knowing that hopefully, people who come to my sessions will glean something, and I can help them out. I'm looking more forward to, like you say, as the PNP is ramping up and spreading out, right? Like it was, as far as I knew, right, PNP was largely focused on, originally PNP was focused on PowerShell and JavaScript, and now it's branching off into many other segments. And I love that, right? Because that gives us all a much bigger breadth of impact. There's a lot wider spectrum where we can help people and impact what we do every day, right? Like I Google the heck out of my job every day, and nobody remembers the syntax for all the PowerShell in the world. So it's super helpful to have resource material, so I try to get back to that whenever I can, and I try to encourage other people to do it too. I think too, I also believe that we need more diversification in that footprint too, right? Like we're all a bunch of super nerds. Everybody that's on the computer these days has to be super nerd to understand them and use them for the most part, right? But especially us that are in the apps dev space and us that are looking to share, I think I see that in an ebb and a flow as well. That's a cyclical, push where you'll see it expand into diversification, right? And then that bulk of the people kind of stifles, right? Or I think we've conversed in the past, David, about it's a fall off rate, right? Like you see a big contribution and then it kind of falls off and levels out. And I would love for, and I try to encourage as much as I can, bring in the diversity and inclusion and just get new ideas, right, from new people, and bring in the new blood, and wherever possible, try to make a contribution as big as you can, and that could be spell checking a document, right? Like that was my last contribution to GitHub, was spell checking a document. Totally,
and that's
cool,
great, right? I mean, like, don't discount it. It's awesome because every little bit, and sometimes that's the gateway drug, right? It's like you don't quite know how to start with it, and you move on. And I mean, that's kind of what Sharing is Caring in the PNP initiative was built for, was to assist and break down little hurdles and get beyond them. So that's awesome.
I think the more the first one is a gateway drug, like you say, right? It's you get in, you try something easy, and you go, wow, this isn't as hard as I thought it was. And that could be speaking, that could be, community contribution online at GitHub or whatever, right? Any little contribution that you make is a big contribution to somebody. And for me personally, that was something I didn't really grasp onto until probably, I would say, a year into like publicly speaking. It didn't really click for me that, like, hey, even the littlest thing can make a huge for someone. And that was after me, being years and years of a leech out there, letting other people's little contributions be a huge impact for me. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like if nothing else, it's a big, for some people I think it's nerves. For some people I think it's just a leap of faith that they can help, right? Maybe they don't feel like their contribution's enough or could help, but it's a start. And I think it also opens up communication avenues for people who understand your skill set or understand your tooling and your patterns, not for, no sponsorship here, but your patterns and practices that you employ, right?
That one we fully endorse you sponsoring, by the way. We're both on board with that one.
But to your earlier point, we all did sort of the same thing in our own way, right? And my way of doing it may resonate more with someone in the community than your way of doing the same thing. It's the same achievement, right? But there's like, we got the same goal, but there's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat. And if you don't put it out there, you never know who that would resonate with, I would say.
Yeah. And to your point, I started contributing when the moment I realized that we all have no idea what we're doing was the moment I was like, yeah, my opinion kind of could be important too, right? Like I could do a blog that might help someone, right? We're all in the same world where we don't know everything. I hate using the term expert for any piece of technology that relates to anything that we do because there's just too much going on, and we all rely on each other for knowledge and sharing. And so when I realized that, and I could give back because there was people before me who have been contributing for years who helped me, that was the time where it was like, oh, I should give back too, because there's other people who are just coming in like I was 10 years ago, and they need to learn and they have to know how to do things. And SharePoint's not an easy thing. You come in, it's like there's 100 ways to do a single thing, and you go to the forums and there's responses. You ask one question and there's 10 different answers to the same question, So it's a wild world that we live in. And I think don't ever be afraid to contribute your opinion, because I think there's many people out there who are in the same boat as you who feel like they should share or could share, and they just don't know where to start. And so to Dave's point is like, there's an initiative that exists, which is Sharing and Caring, where Dave will walk you through how to contribute, how to modify documents, even if it's just adding a capital P to SharePoint, right? Like that's a contribution, whether it seems insignificant. And so that's the gateway into it. And then you fall in love and you're just contributing as much as you can after that.
And the collaborative spirit of the community helps drive that even more, right? It's just, I think people are afraid, they feel like they have to come in with their first ever contribution has to be this whimsical, magical thing that everyone's going to go, oh my God, I didn't even know that exists. But it doesn't have to be. And, eventually that might happen, but it might happen with a group of people as opposed to just you doing it on your own. And to me, that's even cooler, to have that chemistry occur in the community globally that might not have ever happened before on your own. To me, I think that's the most special.
Yeah, for sure. I think too, people shouldn't be afraid to ask, right? Like on the other side of it, like we're talking about contributing, but I think a lot of times there's a hurdle of fear that people need to overcome to ask a question, either in a public forum or I mean, even to a public figure, right? Like I don't want to call us, mainstream public figures, but we contribute to the community. We're out there as speakers, presenters, as connection points to the broader technical, community. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to reach out and ask too, I can't tell you how many sessions I've gone to or given, and my last slide deck is my contact. My first slide on my deck is my contact information. The last slide deck says thank you with my contact information, and nobody ever reaches out with any questions. So either I answered all their questions in the session, or they're afraid to ask. And I was, right, like way back when there were some people that I didn't want to ask a stupid question to, but in reality, right, they're all just questions. There's no stupid questions. They're just questions. And somebody I may not know the answer to, I probably don't know the answer to, but I could find somebody that does, right? And in the spirit of the community, that's what it's, I think, a lot of times about. It's just helping to find the connection point to the right person or to the person with the knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So on that note, the kind of the question that I like to end most of these conversations with is, now that we're talking about events you're speaking at, hopefully a lot this year, we'll see which ones become virtual, which ones cancel, but if someone wants to come up and talk to you after, so most events, SharePoint events have SharePints or something after the fact. What's the best icebreaker for someone to come up to you if they did have a question and say, hey, Richard, I saw your session. We know Jeeps We know Disney World. What else is kind of a topic that can really break the ice?
Scotch. I mean, for wine, I'm pretty much a cheap date, but Scotch is good. Good conversation. Cigars too, right? Okay, I'm painting a picture. Jeeps, cigars, Scotch. I think technology in general is always an icebreaker for me. I geek out over a lot of things. Me and another fellow speaker, you guys may know him, Matt Wade, recently were probably a little too loud in a public forum all about Disney. So yeah, Disney's a good gateway drug for me. I think if you're gonna get in and get a conversation going, go Disney.
I just want Matt Wade to listen to this talk. No one has ever said Matt Wade is quiet. So I just want to shout out to Matt Wade there. He's a great guy.
And he's amazing
at louder of the two.
And he's amazing at making the truth sound like a lie after our Two Truths and a Lie community event.
Oh, yes.
That was amazing.
Yes. David, do you have any other questions for our esteemed guest?
No, I think it's been fantastic. Richard, we appreciate you being a guest on the show today. We look forward to sharing with this community and appreciate you making time for us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.